This is Chapter 1, Part 2. Exhibit 1.1 shows some sources of business intelligence. Sources of government information include speeches by elected officials, recordings of public proceedings, press releases, and agency websites. Sources of competitive information include presentations at conferences, literature searches, press releases, syndicated industry studies, websites, clipping services, and business research. Sources of economic information include literature searches and government reports. Sources of cultural and social information include syndicated studies, public opinion organizations, business research, and government reports. Sources of technological information include patent filings, websites, syndicated industry studies, presentations at conference, literature searches, and clipping services. Sources of demographic information include syndicated studies, government reports, and business research. Now let me define clipping services. That's a term given to companies that used to go through newspapers and magazines and look for articles of particular interest to their clients. So if you had a company that created automobiles, manufactured cars, you would want articles clipped out that talked about your company and that also talked about your competition. These days you can use Google News Alerts to accomplish much of the same thing that the clipping services did for many years. Exhibit 1-2 illustrates the hierarchy of business decision makers. In the bottom tier, most decisions are based on past experience or instinct. Decisions are also supported with secondary data searches. In the middle tier, some decisions are based on business research. So research would provide new information that's not already published and not already available. And the top tier, every decision is guided by business research. Firms develop proprietary methodologies and are innovative in their combination of methodologies to answer their business questions. There's access to research data and findings throughout the organization. Minute Maid is an example of a top-tier organization. Procter & Gamble has a world-class research department. They're always testing new product ideas, new packaging ideas. They're test marketing things. They know a lot about their customers. Business research is only valuable when it helps management make better decisions. A study may be interesting, but if it does not help improve decision making, its use should be questioned. Research could be appropriate for some problems, but insufficient resources may limit the usefulness of its findings. The information value chain. Computers and telecommunications have lowered the cost of data collection. We talked a little bit about this in the last video. Data management is now possible and necessary given the quantity of raw data. Models reflect the behavior of individuals, households, and industries. A DSS integrates data management techniques, models, and analytical tools to support decision making. Data must be more than timely and standardized. It has to also be meaningful. And these are all characteristics of the information value chain. How much value does this information have? Now we look at the research process. Get to know this chart very well. This is a little bit more of a complicated or integrated version. It's elaborated more than the 8 steps that I normally use when I present undergraduate classes with the research process. So this is the process you're going to use throughout the text and throughout the course. As you see at the top here, the first thing you have to do is clarify your research question. What are the decisions that are going to be made based upon what we find out with the research. So we have to look at the very end first. How is the information going to be applied and going to affect decision making? Then at the very beginning here, you clarify the actual research questions that are going to provide those answers. And you can do some exploratory research to kind of get a feel for the market or who you should even give the surveys to. Once you have a feel for that and you've refined your research questions, then you create a research proposal. And the research proposal will have the questions, it will have the proposed design, it will have other aspects that bring to the final stage of the management decision. In the research design strategy, we see how we're going to identify how we're going to collect information, who we're going to collect it from, and how we're going to collect it. Then we do the data collection. Then we do the analysis of that data and we interpret the data. And then we report it back to the management. At the very end, the very last step here is the management decision. We'll be coming back to this chart often. So what are characteristics of good research? Well, you have to have a clearly defined purpose. Your process has to be detailed. It has to be thoroughly planned. You have to maintain high ethical standards. You have to honestly and realistically address the limitations of the research. What is the research falling short of telling us? You have to do an adequate analysis of the data you get. Your presentation has to be unambiguous. It has to be very clear on recommendations. Conclusions have to be justified on why these conclusions represent information that's valuable that we should base our decisions upon. Then, of course, there are the credentials, reputation, the accuracy of a good research company. Research is conducted in-house by research departments of companies, and there are also external research consultants who are hired to conduct research projects for companies and present the results to them. Two types of research here. The two main large overarching categories are applied research and basic. Applied research applies the process of research to discovering solutions for specific immediate problems or opportunities. Basic research aims to solve more overarching questions, more theoretical in nature. It may have little effect on immediate action or performance or policy, but in the long run it builds a foundation from which we can build later on with applied research. Types of studies. Reporting studies provide a summation of data, often recasting data to achieve a deeper understanding or to generate statistics for comparison. A descriptive study tries to discover answers to questions of who, what, where, when, and sometimes how. An explanatory study attempts to explain the reasons for a phenomenon that the descriptive study only observed, so it may be a cause and effect. A predictive study attempts to predict when and in what situations an event will occur. Studies may also be described as applied research or basic research. So a predictive study may be one in which you say, based upon this advertising campaign we're going to do, we can predict the impact of this ad campaign on sales, how it will increase sales. Some key terms here I want you to look up in your book. I would suggest that you take out a sheet of paper, write down all these terms, go through the first chapter and look up and write down the definitions or descriptions for each of these terms. Now we're going to move into the appendix part. How the research industry works. Who conducts business research? If you'd like to, you can pause, or you can refer to the appendix of Chapter 1 to look up this chart here. We'll be addressing this chart more in detail as we move through the course. But if you'll look at the green areas here, as I said before, there are internal research departments that companies have, and you see all the different things that fall under that. There are business research firms that conduct this as consultants. There are communication agencies that do this. There are marketing and general business consultants that do that. And there are trade associations that provide what we call more general information, or we can call them sometimes syndicated research. Over on the left side, this would be considered proprietary research. It's done internally. You don't want the results to get out to your competition. So here's your internal research. These are called in-house. External research suppliers can be further classified into business research firms, communication agencies, consultants, and trade organizations. Business research firms may be full service or specialty based. A full service firm conducts all phases of research from planning to insight development. They may offer custom project tailored to a client's specific needs. This is called proprietary. Proprietary methodologies are programs and techniques that are owned by the firm. They're secret, trade secrets, so to speak. Specialty firms establish expertise in one or a few methodologies. They represent the largest number of research firms and tend to dominate the small research firms operated by a single research firm or a small staff. Syndicated data providers track the change of one or more measures over time. Many research companies offer proprietary services for different types of research. This is syndicated data here. Nielsen Media Research provides audience data for television programs, and customers will subscribe to that data. Everybody gets the same information. Competing firms will get the same information on audience measurements. Here are some syndicated data providers. Feel free to pause the video if you'd like to look at these in more detail. Specialty business research firms. They may specialize in methodology. They may specialize in the process and contribute only one portion of the research process, such as sample recruitment, getting the people for the study, or just doing the actual telephone interviewing. Firms specialize by industry, meaning they become experts in pharmaceutical research or telecommunications or whatever that field is. We have firms specializing by participant group. In other words, to reach Latin Americans or to reach teenagers or something like that. There are also firms that specialize by geographic region. Communication agencies are heavy users of the syndicated research like Nielsen data. All consultants are involved in extensive secondary research for their clients and may also be major influencers in research design. Trade associations do not conduct or supply research services, but they commission outside companies and disseminate their reports. Here are some trade associations. We looked at this before. Some key terms now. You may want to pause again and write these down. The research timeline is important. This timeline indicates the information revolution, starting with the beginnings of the internet in 1960s, IBM introducing computers, word processing starting in the late 60s, the first optical laser discs or CD-ROMs in 1972, the idea of the internet, Microsoft, the Apple computer, and by 1980, Apple owned 50% of the PC market. After that, we've got the World Wide Web coming along in 1991. By 1996, the internet was extremely popular. Web conferencing software, introduced in 2002. So that ends chapter 1.